The red dust of Ares 9 coated everything. It filtered through the seams of atmosphere suits, it jammed weapon systems, and it served as the final blanket for thousands of steel grave markers stretching toward the rust-colored horizon. Captain Leora Kane's boots crunched against the hardened sand as she made her solitary pilgrimage through the memorial field. Each step was deliberate, weighed down by more than just the gravity of this unforgiving planet. 7 years had passed since the bloody Helios border battle, yet the memories remained as fresh as an open wound. The Light Fleet had established this memorial field as a testament to those who never returned home, each marker representing a soldier lost in combat or to the hostile environment itself. Most markers stood as empty monuments to the missing bodies never recovered, soldiers simply evaporated into the endless expanse of frontier space. Leora pulled her atmospheric hood tighter against the howling desert wind. The filtration system hummed softly, converting the unbreathable air into something her lungs could process, though it couldn't filter the heaviness from her heart. Her squadron patched the gold-emblazoned insignia of the Light Fleet's 7th Reconnaissance Division, caught the dim light of the setting sun as she adjusted her equipment. The memorial field stretched before her like a metallic sea, organized in perfect military rows according to battalion and rank. She knew the path by heart, could walk it blindfolded through the storms that periodically swept across the planet's surface. 7 years of visits, 7 years of the same pilgrimage. Leora checked her wrist display. The atmospheric conditions were deteriorating, but she still had approximately 47 minutes before the dust storm would reach dangerous levels. 47 minutes to fulfill her annual ritual. 47 minutes with him. The marker labeled J-2047 stood slightly apart from the others, positioned at the edge of the Black Tiger Squadron section. Unlike the other graves, this one bore evidence of regular visits. The dust around its base disturbed the metal surface, cleared of the worst of the red film that covered everything else. Leora knelt before it, reaching out with her gloved hand to trace the engraved numbers that represented the entirety of a life reduced to military identification. Captain Jace Rourke, Black Tiger Squadron, tactical genius, her best friend, her greatest failure. "I brought your favorite," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind's mournful howl. She withdrew a small metallic flask from her utility belt, unscrewing the cap and pouring a measure of amber liquid onto the red sand at the base of the marker. "Martian whiskey. Still tastes like engine fuel to me, but you always said it cleared the sinuses." The alcohol sizzled slightly as it hit the chemically reactive sand, releasing a pungent aroma that the filtration system couldn't quite neutralize. Leora took a small sip herself, wincing at the burn. "The fleet's different now," she continued, settling into her one-sided conversation. "General Thorne was promoted to the Admiralty. Remember how you always said she'd make it there before 50? You won that bet." She forced a smile, though there was no one present to see it beneath her atmospheric mask. "Keller's squadron took heavy casualties in the Proxima engagement last month. We're still rebuilding. Your replacement—" She stopped, shaking her head. "No one's really replaced you, Jace. We just filled your position." She fell silent, allowing the wind to fill the space between her words. The horizon had darkened ominously, the approaching storm painting the sky in deepening shades of crimson and ochre. In the distance, the titanium spires of the Light Fleet outpost gleamed dully, a reminder of humanity's tenuous foothold on this hostile world. "I should have been there," Leora said, finally, her voice cracking. The words she'd repeated every visit for 7 years. "I should have listened when you said something was wrong with the scout reports. I should have backed you when you challenged the command sequence." Her gloved hands clenched into fists. "I should have gone with you on that final patrol." She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small object, a broken sword tip fashioned into a pendant, bearing the insignia of the Black Tiger Squadron. It had been salvaged from the wreckage of Jace's fighter, the only identifiable piece of equipment recovered from the ambush site. "I'm sorry," she whispered, pressing her forehead against the cold metal of the grave marker. I'm sorry I didn't save you. A sound behind her, the soft crunch of boots on sand, jerked Leora from her moment of grief. Instinctively, her hand moved to the plasma pistol at her hip, though she didn't immediately draw it. The memorial field was restricted to military personnel, but she had explicitly requested solitude for her visit. No one should be here, especially not with the approaching storm. She remained motionless, listening. The wind played tricks in this place, carried sounds from the outpost kilometers away, distorted, and transformed them into ghostly approximations of human presence. It wouldn't be the first time her grief had manifested auditory hallucinations. The doctors called it trauma-induced sensory displacement, her mind's effort to fill the void left by those she had lost. But this sound was different, deliberate, rhythmic, the unmistakable cadence of military-issue desert boots against sand. Slowly, Leora rose to her feet, her hand still resting on her weapon. She did not immediately turn around, instead, watching the shadow that had appeared beside her own cast, long and distorted by the setting sun. A humanoid figure draped in what appeared to be a sand-colored cloak, hood pulled low. "This is a restricted area," she said evenly. Military training overriding the initial surge of adrenaline. "Identify yourself." No response came from the figure behind her. The shadow remained stationary, though she could sense the presence shifting slightly, as if adjusting position for a better view of her or the grave marker. Leora drew her weapon in one fluid motion, spinning to face the intruder. "I said identify yourself," she repeated, the plasma pistol's energy cell humming as it powered to ready status. The hooded figure stood approximately 3 meters away, features obscured by both the hood and a sand filter mask similar to her own. But what caught Leora's attention, what caused her heart to stutter in its rhythm, was the armor visible beneath the cloak. Black, with gold accents, scorched in patterns she recognized. The distinctive chest plate of a Black Tiger squadron pilot. Jace's armor. "That uniform is property of the Light Fleet," she said, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Remove it immediately and identify yourself, or I will consider you a hostile and respond accordingly." The figure raised a hand slowly, the gesture oddly familiar in its casual precision. Then, it reached up, fingers brushing against the edge of the hood. For a disorienting moment, Leora thought the figure was about to comply with her demand to reveal their identity. Instead, they simply adjusted their position, allowing the dying sunlight to catch on something at their waist. A small shield fragment bearing the Black Tiger insignia, the matching piece to the broken sword-tip pendant, Leora still clutched in her left hand. "That's impossible," she whispered, weapon wavering slightly. "Where did you get that?" The figure finally spoke, voice distorted by the filter mask, but carrying a cadence that sent ice through Leora's veins. "You remembered the whiskey. You always keep your promises, Lee." No one had called her Lie since Jace disappeared. It had been his nickname for her, since their academy days, a private shorthand between them that had become painful to hear after his loss. "This isn't funny," Leora said, grip tightening on her weapon. "I don't know who you are or how you acquired that equipment, but you have exactly 3 seconds to identify yourself properly." "The night before the Helios engagement," the figure continued, as if she hadn't spoken, "you couldn't sleep. You came to my quarters with a bottle of this same whiskey. We sat on the observation deck and counted stars until you finally told me what was bothering you." Leora's breath caught. This was not information in any official record. "You'd had a dream about your father's death on Europa," the figure continued. "The anniversary was approaching and you thought it was a bad omen for the mission. I told you, that omens only have power if we give it to them." Leora finished automatically, the familiar words slipping out before she could stop them. Her pistol lowered fractionally. "Who are you?" The figure took a step closer. "You know who I am, Lee." "Jace Rourke is dead," Leora said flatly, raising her weapon again. "His ship went down over the Devon territory during the final push. No survivors were recovered. No survivors were looking for—" The figure corrected. Another step forward. "Command wrote us off as acceptable losses when the Devon counterattack began. You were the only one who kept searching after the retreat was ordered. The storm was drawing closer now, the wind picking up force and carrying more of the abrasive red particles. The outpost's warning system would be activating soon, calling all personnel to shelter. Time was running short. Prove it, Leora challenged even, as part of her mind screamed that this was impossible, that she was entertaining a cruel hoax, or worse, that her grief had finally manifested into something more dangerous than mere hallucination. Prove you're Jace Rourke. The figure reached inside their cloak and withdrew something small. They held it out in an open palm, an antique playing card, its edges worn and colors faded. The jack of spades torn precisely in half. Leora's breath hitched. With trembling fingers, she reached into her breast pocket and withdrew her own half of the same card. Their good luck charm torn in two before Jace's final mission, with the promise to reunite the pieces when he returned. "This doesn't prove anything," she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "These details could have been gathered from personal records from surveillance. This could be psychological warfare." "Ask me something only Jace would know," the figure interrupted. "Something that was never recorded, never shared with anyone else." Leora's mind raced through years of friendship searching for something truly private, truly theirs alone. "The oath," she said finally. "The one we took after the Titan incident. Recite it." The figure was silent for a long moment, and Leora felt a strange mixture of disappointment and relief beginning to form. Then they spoke, voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Under different stars, but the same sky, I pledge my life to guard yours. Through void and flame, through victory and defeat, my shield is your shield. My strength is your strength. Where you fall, I will stand. What you forget, I will remember. This I swear on the light between worlds until the final star burns out." The exact words, the exact cadence. A promise made between two frightened cadets who had just witnessed half their training class perish in a training exercise gone catastrophically wrong. Words never written down, never recorded, never shared. Leora's weapon lowered completely, her arm suddenly leaden. How she managed the single word containing volumes. Before the figure could answer, a piercing alarm cut through the howling wind. The outpost's storm, warning signaling immediate evacuation of all exterior positions. Simultaneously, Leora's proximity sensors began pulsing with threat indicators. Multiple contacts approaching from the west, moving fast through the dust storm's leading edge. The figure Jace tensed, head turning toward the new threat. "Devran scouts," he said. Reaching inside his cloak to withdraw a weapon, Leora didn't recognize something that seemed like a hybrid between a pulse rifle and a vibroblade. "They've been tracking me since I crossed the border. We need to move, now." Practical considerations overrode Leora's emotional turmoil. Whatever the truth about this person's identity, the Devran threat was real and immediate. The desert-dwelling species had maintained a hostile stance toward human settlements since first contact, their hit-and-run tactics having claimed countless lives during the border conflicts. "The outpost bunker is our best option," she said, already calculating the fastest route through the memorial field. "We can sort this out once we're secure." "No," the figure countered sharply. "We can't go to the outpost. There are complications. I can't be seen by your command." Leora's suspicion flared again. "What kind of complications?" "The kind that will get both of us killed if we don't move now," he insisted, the familiar stubborn edge to his voice so achingly like Jace that it momentarily stunned her. He gestured eastward. "There's a formation of rocks 2 kilometers in that direction. Natural cave system. The Devran won't follow us in there, they consider it sacred ground." The proximity alerts were intensifying. The Devran scouts were closing fast, using the storm as cover for their approach. Leora had perhaps seconds to decide. "Fine," she said tersely, holstering her pistol and drawing her service rifle instead. "But I want answers the minute we're clear." "You'll get them," the figure promised. "All of them." They moved in perfect synchronization, a combat partnership forged through years of training and battlefield experience. Despite her lingering doubts, Leora found herself falling into familiar patterns, covering sectors, as they advanced, maintaining optimal spacing, communicating with the minimal hand signals that had been second nature when fighting alongside Jace. The storm enveloped them fully, now visibility reduced to mere meters. Leora switched her visor to thermal imaging, the world transforming into gradients of heat signatures against the cooling desert background. The memorial field markers appeared as cold blue spires in her enhanced vision, creating an obstacle course they navigated with practiced ease. Behind them, the Devran scouts registered as bright, orange-red forms, moving with the peculiar undulating gait of their species. Leora counted at least 7 distinct signatures, too many to engage directly, while caught in the open during a storm. "They're gaining," she warned, voice tight with exertion. "Almost there," her companion responded. 30 seconds to the rock formation." The first energy blast sizzled past Leora's helmet, close enough that her suit registered a temperature spike. She pivoted smoothly, dropping to one knee and returning fire without breaking stride. Her shots disappeared into the swirling dust, but she heard the distinctive shriek of a Devran taking damage. "Down!" her companion barked, and Leora dropped instantly to the sand as another blast passed through the space where her head had been. The figure, she still couldn't fully commit to calling him Jace, fired 3 precise shots from his strange weapon. Each found its mark, the thermal signatures of 2 Devran scouts flaring brightly before diminishing rapidly. They reached the rock formation. As the storm reached its full intensity, the howling wind now carrying particles large enough to damage exposed equipment. The cave turned out to be more of a deep crevice in the ancient stone, barely wide enough for them to enter single file, but extending back far enough to provide genuine shelter. Leora took up a defensive position at the entrance, while her companion moved deeper inside, activating some kind of portable shield generator that created a translucent energy barrier across the crevice opening. The barrier would allow them to see out while preventing the worst of the storm and the Devran weapons from penetrating. "Nice tech," Leora commented, examining the shield's unusual configuration. "Not standard Light Fleet issue." "No," he agreed, removing his hood, but keeping the filter mask in place. "Not standard anything." With the immediate danger temporarily contained, the full weight of the situation crashed back upon Leora. She turned to face the figure, fully raising her rifle, not quite to firing position, but maintaining clear control of it. "Start talking," she demanded. "Who are you really? How do you know those things about Jace, about us?" The figure hesitated, then reached up and removed the filter mask. The face beneath was both achingly familiar and disturbingly wrong. It was Jace's face, the strong jawline, the slight asymmetry of his features, the small scar cutting through his right eyebrow from a training accident. But the eyes were different. The warm hazel she remembered had been replaced by an unnaturally bright blue, with faint circuitry patterns visible beneath the surface. "I am Jace Rourke," he said quietly. "But not only Jace Rourke." Leora's grip tightened on her weapon. "Explain. What do you remember about the Devran Lee, about their technology?" "Primitive energy weapons. Some rudimentary biomechanical interfaces. Nothing particularly advanced." She recited the standard intelligence assessment from her briefings. A bitter smile crossed the familiar, unfamiliar face. "That's what we all thought. We were wrong." He began removing his cloak, revealing more of the damaged armor beneath. "When my ship went down in their territory, I expected to die. Maybe hoped for it when I realized what had happened. But they didn't want me dead." He rolled up the sleeve of his undersuit, exposing his left arm. What should have been flesh was instead a complex amalgamation of synthetic materials, and what appeared to be actual human tissue, seamlessly integrated in a way that defied Light Fleet medical technology. "They've been studying us for decades," he continued, "learning how we function, how to replicate us." Leora stared at the arm, understanding beginning to dawn with horrifying clarity. "You're not Jace." "I have his memories," the figure said quietly. "His skills, his personality matrix extracted and integrated into this. He gestured at his body. Construct. I remember being Jace Rourke. I remember you, Lee. Everything we experienced together. But yes, I am not entirely him. The revelation should have disgusted her, should have triggered an immediate hostile response. Instead, Leora felt a strange hollowness expanding within her chest. Why are you here? What do you want? Before he could answer, the shield barrier at the entrance flickered as something impacted against it. Not a Devran energy weapon, but something physical and massive. The barrier held, but the generator emitted a warning tone. They've brought a breacher. Not, Jace said grimly, moving back toward the entrance with his weapon raised. Sooner than I expected. Leora joined him, professional instincts, temporarily overriding her emotional turmoil. Through the swirling red haze of the storm, she could make out a large armored Devran warrior, wielding what appeared to be a massive battering ram. Behind it, more warriors were gathering, their angular bodies and segmented limbs barely visible as shadows in the dust. That shield won't hold against concentrated attacks, she warned, checking her rifle's energy cell. 2, maybe 3 hits before failure. I know, he replied, the familiar determination in his voice, causing another pang of disoriented grief. That's why we need to hit them first. He reached into a compartment in his armor and withdrew a small cylindrical device. Sonic disruptor, he explained. Targets their specialized auditory systems. Won't kill them, but it'll disorient them long enough for us to make a move. Leora eyed the device skeptically. And where exactly are we moving to the storms at peak intensity? We'd be blinded the moment we step outside. I have enhanced optical systems, he said, tapping near those unnaturally blue eyes. I can see through the storm better than you can even with your thermal imaging. Trust me to guide us out. Trust. Such a simple word, such an impossible request under the circumstances. Yet Leora found herself nodding, the instinct to follow Jace's lead in combat, too deeply ingrained to fully override even knowing what she now knew. On 3, he said, positioning himself beside the barrier with a sonic device ready. 1, 2. The barrier shattered inward as the Devran breacher made contact, fragments of energy dispersing like shattered glass. Not Jace immediately activated the sonic disruptor, its high-frequency pulse invisible, but audibly devastating to the Devran physiology. The assembled warriors recoiled, their distinctive battle cries transforming into shrieks of pain. Now, he shouted, grabbing Leora's arm and pulling her into the storm. The world outside was chaos, a maelstrom of red particles so dense that Leora's visor immediately registered multiple system warnings. She could see nothing but swirling crimson darkness, feel nothing but the battering of the wind and the firm grip of not Jace's hand on her arm. They moved with desperate speed, stumbling over unseen obstacles. Leora realized they were heading back toward the memorial field, though at an angle from their original approach. The invisible sonic pulse had bought them perhaps a minute of advantage over their pursuers, but the Devran would recover quickly. A blast of energy cut through the storm nearby, vaporizing a section of sand into glass. The Devran were firing blindly, hoping to hit targets they couldn't see. Almost there, not, Jace called over the comlink. There's a maintenance bunker for the memorial field just ahead. Security access panel on the east side. Leora had never heard of such a bunker, but then she had never needed to maintain the memorial markers. She followed blindly, trusting in technology she didn't understand, guiding a being who wore her friend's face. Suddenly, solid metal appeared before them, a small, nondescript structure barely visible through the storm. Not, Jace pressed his palm against what appeared to be a blank section of wall, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing an access keypad. Your access code should work, he said urgently. You have maintenance override as squadron captain. Leora hesitated only a moment before punching in her security clearance. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a dark interior. They tumbled inside, and the door sealed automatically behind them, cutting off the howling fury of the storm. Emergency lighting activated, bathing the small bunker in a soft blue glow. The space was utilitarian monitoring equipment for the Memorial Field's structural integrity maintenance supplies and basic survival gear for technicians caught in sudden storms. A single chair, a small table, a narrow cot against one wall. "We should be safe here until the storm passes." "Not," Jace said, moving to the monitoring console and activating exterior sensors. The bunker's shielded against detection. Leora kept her distance rifle still ready. "How did you know about this place?" He glanced up from the console, expression unreadable. "The real Jace didn't know about it. I learned about it from other sources." "The Devrin." A nod. "Their intelligence network is more sophisticated than we've given them credit for." Leora studied him in the blue light, seeing both the familiar and the alien in his features. The way he moved, the expressions that crossed his face, all perfect replications of Jace's mannerisms. Yet, there was something else there too, a precision, a calculation behind every gesture that hadn't been present in the real Jace. "Why are you here?" she asked again. "What do the Devrin want?" He sighed, a remarkably human sound from something she now knew wasn't fully human. "It's complicated." "We have time," Leora said, gesturing toward the storm raging outside. "Start talking." He sat heavily in the single chair, running a hand through his hair, another perfectly replicated gesture that sent a pang through Leora's chest. "I was created for infiltration," he said finally. "The Devrin have been developing biomechanical replication technology for years. They extract memories, personality patterns, physical capabilities from captured subjects, then integrate them into constructs like me." "Spies," Leora translated flatly. "More than that. Replacements." His expression darkened. "They've already successfully integrated several replicated soldiers back into Light Fleet operations. Command has no idea." The implications were staggering. If what he said was true, the Light Fleet security had been compromised at a fundamental level. "And you were supposed to be one of these replacements?" "Yes. I was supposed to make contact with you, use our shared history, to gain your trust, then gradually work my way back into active duty." He looked up, meeting her eyes directly. "I was meant to replace Captain Jace Rourke, declared killed in action, but miraculously found alive." "Then why are you telling me this?" Leora demanded, confusion and suspicion warring within her. "Why expose the plan?" "Because the integration wasn't perfect," he said quietly. "The process of transferring human consciousness isn't an exact science even for the Devrin. Sometimes, echoes remain, fragments of genuine personality that the construct wasn't meant to inherit." "What kind of fragments?" His expression softened into something painfully familiar, the look Jace would get when making a difficult admission. "Loyalty. To you. To what we stood for." He shook his head. "I was programmed to use our connection, but I wasn't supposed to feel it. Yet I do." Leora wanted desperately to believe him, yet caution held her back. "This could all be part of your programming, a more sophisticated approach to gain my trust." "It could be," he acknowledged with brutal honesty. "I've asked myself the same question. How much of what I feel is real, and how much is designed to manipulate you? I don't have a definitive answer." He stood suddenly, moving toward the maintenance supplies and retrieving a medical scanner. He held it out to Leora. "Check me. See for yourself what I am." Cautiously, Leora accepted the scanner. It was standard Light Fleet issue designed for field triage, but capable of detecting basic life signs and identifying major biological anomalies. She activated it and directed it toward not Jace. The readings were unlike anything she'd seen before. The scanner detected both organic and inorganic components, integrated so seamlessly that the device struggled to differentiate between them. Heart rate, respiration, neural activity all present, but operating with a precision that no human body could maintain. And beneath it all, energy signatures that the scanner couldn't identify. "You're right," she said, finally lowering the device. "You're not human, not entirely." "No," he agreed simply. "But you have Jace's memories, his experiences?" Yes, all of them, as far as I can tell. Leora's mind raced with implications, questions, suspicions. One emerged above the others, demanding immediate answer. If you're here with Jace's memories but not his body, then what happened to the real Jace? Something flickered across not Jace's face, pain perhaps, or regret. He was alive when I was created. The extraction process doesn't destroy the original consciousness, though it damages it. The Devrin keep the originals for continued study, updating the constructs periodically with new memories and experiences. Hope and horror collided in Leora's chest. Jace is alive where? In the main Devrin research facility, approximately 50 kilometers west of here, deep underground. He hesitated. But, Lee, he's not the same. The repeated extractions take a toll. There's a reason they don't simply release the originals once they have what they need. Leora's determination crystallized instantly. We have to get him out. Not. Jace blinked, seeming genuinely surprised by her immediate resolve. That's not why I came to find you. The facility is heavily guarded and— I don't care, Leora interrupted, already moving to the bunker's supply cache, taking inventory of what resources might be useful. If Jace is alive, I'm getting him out. That's non-negotiable. Even knowing what I've told you about the infiltration, the compromised security. He stood watching her, with a mixture of admiration and exasperation that was so quintessentially Jace that it momentarily stopped her in her tracks. The strategic priority should be warning your command about the breach. Leora resumed her inventory, voice steady. And I will, after we recover Jace. Why trust me at all? He asked, the genuine confusion in his voice, giving her pause. I've just told you I was created to deceive you, to replace someone you cared about and infiltrate your military. For all you know, this could be an elaborate trap. Leora turned to face him fully. Because you didn't have to tell me any of this. You could have played the part, returned to the fleet as a hero, completed your mission. Instead, you're here exposing yourself and your creators. She gestured to the storm outside. Being hunted by them. She approached him slowly, studying the face so familiar, yet fundamentally changed. And because I want to believe that whatever they took from Jace to make you it included the best parts of him. His loyalty, his integrity. She allowed herself a small, sad smile. His stubborn commitment to doing the right thing even when it was the hard thing. Not. Jace held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded once decisively. If we're going to do this, and I still think it's tactically unsound, we'll need more than what's in this bunker. We need a plan, equipment, and ideally backup. I can get us equipment, Leora said, mind already calculating logistics. My access codes will get us into the armory without raising immediate alarms. As for backup, she hesitated. That's more complicated. If what you're saying about infiltration is true, I don't know who I can trust. There's someone, not Jace, said tentatively. Major Ferris. He was captured with Jace, but escaped before they could complete the replication process. They managed to extract some memories, but not enough for a functional construct. He's been reassigned to administrative duties, which is why the Devrin haven't prioritized creating a replacement for him yet. Leora frowned. Amir Ferris, I know him. He returned about 2 years ago, claimed he'd been held in a primitive prisoner camp, but escaped during transport. She narrowed her eyes. How do you know he's trustworthy? I've seen the facility records. His escape is documented as a major security breach. The Devrin don't fabricate failure reports even for deception operations. Not Jace moved to the monitoring station, checking the storm's progress. He might have valuable intelligence about the facility layout, security protocols. The storm was beginning to abate, the worst of its fury past. Soon, they would be able to move to put whatever plan they could devise into action. But first, Leora needed one more answer. What should I call you? She asked quietly. You're not Jace, not really, but you're something of him. He seemed startled by the question, as if it hadn't occurred to him that he might need a separate identity. I don't know. The Devon designated me as Replication Unit J-2047, but that's hardly a name. J. Leora decided the nickname feeling right, somehow an acknowledgement of connection, without pretending he was the original. I'll call you Jay. A small, almost shy smile crossed his face. Jay, he repeated, testing the sound of it. I can work with that. The display at the monitoring station beeped, indicating the storm had dropped below danger levels. Outside, the world would be transformed. Dunes shifted, landmarks buried, or revealed, the harsh landscape reshaped by the planet's brutal weather. Storm's clearing, Jay said unnecessarily. We should move before the Devon scouts regroup and expand their search pattern. Leora nodded, collecting her rifle and checking its systems. We'll head for the outpost approach from the maintenance tunnels. Less chance of being spotted that way. She fixed him with a firm look. And Jay, if this is a trap, if you betray me or put my people at risk, you'll kill me, he finished for her, no trace of fear or offense in his voice. I know, and you'd be right too. They exited the bunker, carefully emerging into a landscape painted in the deep blues and purples of the planet's brief dusk. The memorial field had been partially buried by the storm steel markers protruding from new dune formations at odd angles. The marker labeled J-2047 was now almost completely covered, only its top edge visible above the red sand. As they moved past it, Jay paused, staring at the mostly buried marker that bore his designation. Strange, he murmured, to see your own grave. Leora didn't respond. What could she say? Instead, she placed a hand briefly on his shoulder, a gesture of solidarity she would have offered the real Jace without thought, before continuing forward. The outpost loomed ahead, its functional architecture, a stark contrast to the wild desert surrounding it. Security would be heightened after the storm standard procedure to assess damage and verify perimeter integrity. They would need to time their approach carefully to avoid regular patrol patterns. The maintenance tunnel entrance is behind the Eastern Water Reclamation Unit, Leora explained, as they took cover behind a rocky outcropping to survey the approach. Usually unmanned but monitored by automatic sensors. I can bypass them with my access codes, but it'll register in the system. Jay studied the outpost layout, his enhanced vision allowing him to detect details invisible to Leora. There's a patrol approaching the eastern quadrant now. 2 soldiers, standard sweep pattern. They'll pass the water reclamation unit in approximately 3 minutes. Leora checked her chronometer. We'll need to time this perfectly. Wait for them to complete their sweep, then move during the 6-minute gap before the next patrol reaches that section. They watched in silence as the patrol proceeded exactly as Jay had predicted. 2 light fleet soldiers moving with professional precision along the perimeter, sweeping sensors, checking for anomalies in the storm's aftermath. When they rounded the corner of the main structure, disappearing from view, Leora gave the signal to move. They sprinted across the open ground, taking advantage of the shadows cast by the setting sun. The water reclamation unit, a towering assembly of pipes, filters, and storage tanks, provided cover as they approached the maintenance access panel, hidden behind a section of reinforced plating. Leora keyed in her access code, holding her breath as the system processed her credentials. A soft chime, and the panel slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel, dimly lit by emergency strips. They slipped inside, and the panel sealed automatically behind them. That was too easy, Jay muttered, eyes scanning the tunnel ahead. Security protocols should have been tighter after a storm. Leora shared his concern, but pushed forward. Let's not question good luck. The armory is 3 levels down northwest quadrant. The maintenance tunnels formed a complex network beneath and throughout the outpost, allowing technicians to access critical systems without disrupting day-to-day operations. Leora moved confidently through the labyrinth, having memorized the layout years ago as part of her emergency protocols training. They encountered no personnel, which was unusual, but not entirely unexpected, given the post-storm recovery operations, likely occupying most of the staff. When they reached the access point nearest the armory, Leora paused to check her wrist display. "Shift change should be happening about now," she whispered. "We'll have approximately 40 seconds while the guards transition." Jay nodded, positioning himself beside the access panel. "Ready when you are." Leora counted down on her chronometer, then activated the panel. It slid open, revealing an empty corridor. They moved swiftly, reaching the armory door, just as the sound of voices indicated the approaching relief guards. Another access code, another held breath. The armory door unlocked with a heavy clunk, and they slipped inside moments before the guards rounded the corner. The Light Fleet armory was a marvel of organization and deadliness. Racks of weapons lined the walls: pulse rifles, plasma cannons, precision sniper systems, and personal sidearms, all arranged by classification and power output. Tactical gear filled central islands: atmosphere suits, armor plating, stealth field generators, and combat enhancers. "We need to be selective," Leora said, already moving toward the specialized equipment section. "Portable high-impact gear only. We'll be moving fast with minimal support." Jay nodded immediately, heading for the weapons rack. He selected a modular pulse rifle with multiple configuration options, plus a set of vibro knives designed for close-quarters combat. His movements were efficient, professional, a soldier selecting tools for a mission, not a saboteur gathering destructive force. Leora assembled her own kit: atmospheric survival gear, medical supplies, including stim packs and trauma-sealant portable shield generators, and a compact but powerful communications disruptor. She added a specialized tactical retrieval harness designed to transport wounded personnel to her collection, trying not to think too deeply about what condition they might find the real Jason. "We should contact Major Ferris before we leave," she said, securing the gear in carry packs. "If he's going to help us, we need to bring him in now." Jay hesitated. Contacting him from inside the outpost is risky. The communication system might be monitored. "Then we do it in person." Leora checked the duty roster displayed on the armory's information terminal. "He's assigned to operations, should be on duty now." They finished gathering their equipment, carefully selecting items that wouldn't be immediately missed from inventory. Standard practice was to conduct full armory checks only once per week, which should give them enough time to complete their mission and return, assuming everything went according to plan. Which in Leora's experience it rarely did. Exiting the armory proved simpler than entering it. They waited for the regular patrol to pass, then slipped back into the maintenance tunnel with their acquired gear. Moving through the outpost to operations presented a greater challenge, as the central command areas were more heavily trafficked and secured. "There's a maintenance junction that opens directly into the operations back corridor," Leora explained, as they navigated the tunnels. "Usually used for emergency access during system failures. It's restricted, but my override should work." Jay followed silently, his enhanced senses, constantly scanning for threats or anomalies. When they reached the junction, Leora entered her command code, but instead of the expected green access light, a red warning indicator flashed. "That's not right," she muttered, trying again with the same result. "My clearance should work on all maintenance systems." "Security might have been upgraded," Jay suggested, examining the panel more closely. "Or," he trailed off, expression darkening. Or your access has been specifically restricted," he finished grimly. "Which would suggest someone knows we're here." A cold weight settled in Leora's stomach. "We need a new approach. If we can't access operations directly, we'll need to draw Ferris out." Jay considered for a moment. "Personal quarters might be easier to access. We could leave a message arrangement to meet somewhere secure." Leora nodded. "Officers' quarters are on level 5 East Wing. Still need to get there without being seen." They backtracked through the maintenance tunnels, taking a different route toward the residential sections of the outpost. The living quarters were less heavily monitored than command areas designed to provide at least the illusion of privacy for personnel stationed on this desolate world. When they reached the access point nearest to the officer's wing, Leora checked the corridor through the small view panel before opening the door. Empty, as expected during duty hours. They moved swiftly down the corridor, checking door designations, until they found Major Ferris's quarters. Leora pressed her palm against the identification panel beside the door. "This will register my access," she warned. "If security is watching for unusual activity, this could trigger an alert." "We don't have many alternatives at this point," Jay replied. "Do it." The door slid open, after a brief scan allowing them entrance to the Spartan quarters. Standard military-issue furniture, minimal personal effects. Ferris apparently hadn't felt the need to make the space his own during his 2 years back with the fleet. Leora quickly wrote a message on a secure data tablet, encrypting it with an old code she and Ferris had used during previous operations. Simple and direct. "Need to discuss Helios incident. Meet at Memorial Marker J2047 at 2200 hours. Come alone. Critical information regarding your escape. L." She placed the tablet on his desk where it couldn't be missed, then turned to Jay. "Now, we get out, return to the memorial field, and wait." They retraced their steps through the maintenance tunnels, encountering no resistance or security personnel. The ease of their movement continued to concern Leora. Either they were extremely fortunate, or they were being allowed to proceed for reasons she couldn't determine. Exiting the outpost proved as simple as entering it had been. They emerged into the desert night, the twin moons of Ares 9 casting an eerie blue-green light across the transformed landscape. The temperature had dropped significantly, the planet's extreme diurnal variation turning the scorching daytime desert into a freezing nighttime waste. They made their way back to the memorial field, finding a defensive position with good sight lines, among a cluster of partially buried markers. While they waited for the appointed meeting time, Leora inventoried their acquired equipment, ensuring everything was functional and ready for deployment. "Tell me about the facility," she said as she checked power cells and calibration settings. "What are we going to be facing?" Jay settled into a sniper's crouch, his enhanced vision scanning the perimeter as he spoke. "The main research complex is underground approximately 5 levels. Entry points are disguised as natural cave formations, heavily guarded by both conventional forces and automated defense systems. Numbers: at least 50 Devran warriors at any given time, plus technical staff and command personnel. The prisoner section is on the lowest level, maximum security." Leora adjusted the settings on a shield generator. "Security measures: biometric scanners keyed to Devran physiology motion sensors, atmospheric composition monitors that detect non-Devran breathing patterns." He paused. "And something else, a perimeter system that detects synthetic consciousness, designed to prevent constructs like me from escaping or operating independently." That caught Leora's attention. "Will that be a problem for you?" "It should have been," he admitted. "But I've been modified by myself after I broke conditioning. The standard detection parameters don't register me properly anymore." A hint of pride colored his voice. "I'm something of an anomaly." "How did you break conditioning?" Leora asked, genuine curiosity, overriding her focus on tactical preparations. "If you were programmed for infiltration for deception, how did you overcome that?" Jay was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant outpost. "It wasn't a single moment," he said finally. "More of a gradual process. The memory integration isn't perfect. There are inconsistencies, gaps, contradictions. I started noticing them, questioning them." His voice softened. "And then there was you." "Me." "In Jace's memories, you were everything. His closest friend, his most trusted ally. The person he would have died for without hesitation." He turned to look at her, those unnaturally blue eyes, reflecting the moonlight. "The Devran tried to use that connection to weaponize it for their purposes. But they couldn't control the emotions that came with it. The loyalty, the care." Leora felt an uncomfortable tightness in her chest. This wasn't Jace, she knew that intellectually. Yet the echo of him was so perfect, so complete, that her heart struggled to maintain the distinction. "I remembered the oath," Jay continued. "Our oath. It became a focus point, something the conditioning couldn't override. And eventually, I realized I couldn't fulfill my mission. I couldn't betray you, even if that was my purpose." Before Leora could respond, Jay suddenly tensed, raising his rifle slightly. Someone's coming. Single figure from the direction of the outpost. Leora shifted position, bringing her own weapon to ready status as she peered through the darkness. A solitary figure was indeed approaching across the sand, moving with the cautious precision of military training. Ferris, she whispered. Can't confirm from this distance, Jay replied. But the height and build are consistent. They waited in silence as the figure drew closer, eventually resolving into the recognizable form of Major Amir Ferris. He moved with a slight limp, a souvenir from his time in Devon captivity, according to official reports, and wore standard duty uniform, rather than combat gear. Hold position, Leora instructed Jay. Let me make contact first. She emerged partially from cover, keeping her weapon lowered, but ready. Major Ferris, she called, voice-carrying just far enough to reach him. Verification code Sierra Echo Tango 903. Ferris stopped, visibly startled by her appearance. Captain Kane, what the hell is going on? He peered into the darkness, trying to identify her companion. Your message was cryptic even by your standards. Verification code, first, Amir Leora, insisted, using his first name deliberately, a reminder of their shared history, their prior trust. Ferris hesitated, then responded, Verification code Tango Alpha Lima 77, the correct response to her challenge. Leora signaled for Jay to join her, watching Ferris's reaction carefully as the construct emerged from the shadows. The Major's expression shifted from confusion to shock, then to a white-faced fury as recognition dawned. What? He began, hand moving instinctively to his sidearm. Don't, Leora warned, raising her own weapon slightly. Hear us out first. Ferris's eyes darted between them, lingering on Jay's face with undisguised horror. That's not Rourke, he said flatly. Rourke is dead. Or worse. You're right, Jay acknowledged, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. I'm not the original Jace Rourke. I'm a constructed replica created by the Devon, using his extracted memories and personality patterns. I know exactly what you are, Ferris spat, his hand still hovering near his weapon. I watched them make others like you while I was in that hellhole. He turned to Leora. Whatever it's told you is a lie, Captain. These things are programmed to infiltrate, to earn trust, to dismantle us from within. I know what he is, Leora replied calmly. He told me himself. But he's also the reason we know that Jace, the real Jace, might still be alive. And you might be the key to helping us get him back. Ferris stared at her, disbelief warring with hope on his features. Rourke is alive. You're certain? Jay says he was when this construct was created, Leora confirmed. Being held in the same facility where you were captive, the place you escaped from. The mention of his escape caused a subtle shift in Ferris's demeanor, a tightening around the eyes, a slight straightening of posture. That's not possible. I was held in a temporary camp, not a research facility. If Rourke had been there, I would have seen him. Jay shook his head. You were in the main facility, Major. The same place where they extracted your partial memories, not enough for a complete construct, but enough to recognize what I am. He gestured to his own face. Your escape is documented in Devon records as a significant security breach. How convenient that only you have access to these supposed records, Ferris countered. But Leora noted the undercurrent of uncertainty in his voice. Major Amir, she said, softening her tone. We need your help. If there's any chance Jace is alive, we have to try to recover him. You know the facility, whether you remember it clearly or not. You found a way out. Help us find a way in. Ferris was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the moonlight. Finally, he sighed heavily. This is insane. You know that even if Rourke is alive, even if this thing is telling the truth, the two of us against an entire Devon facility is suicide. 3 of us, Jay corrected quietly. Ferris ignored him, focusing on Leora. Have you considered the possibility that this is exactly what they want, to lure more high-value targets into their grasp, to capture you for the same purpose they captured Rourke. "I've considered it," Leora admitted. "But I'm going anyway, with or without your help." Another long silence. Then, "I don't remember much of the layout," Ferris said finally. "They kept me sedated most of the time, but there was a service tunnel maintenance access for their water reclamation system. That's how I got out. Minimal guards, automated security only." He glanced at Jay with lingering suspicion. "If he's telling the truth about the prisoner level, we might be able to get in that way." Leora nodded, relief washing through her. "Thank you, Amir." "Don't thank me yet," he warned. "This is still likely to get us all killed, or worse." His gaze returned to Jay. "And I still don't trust that thing, whatever it says about breaking its programming." "Noted," Jay said evenly. "But at the moment our interests align. I want to help rescue the original Jace as much as you do." "Why?" Ferris challenged. "If he returns, what happens to you? You think the fleet will let two versions of the same person coexist? You'll be dissected in a lab." A shadow crossed Jay's face. "Probably, but it's the right thing to do." He looked at Leora. "It's what he would do." The simple statement hung in the air between them, its sincerity impossible to dismiss, even for the skeptical Ferris. Finally, the Major nodded. "We'll need more than what you're carrying," he said, eyeing their equipment. "And we'll need a way to approach the facility without being detected by their perimeter scanners." "What about a Devran scout vessel?" Leora suggested. "The ones that attacked us earlier. If we could locate and appropriate one." "Risky," Ferris said, "but possible. After storms like the one today, they often send expanded patrols to check for exposure of their hidden entry points or damaged equipment." Jay nodded. "There's likely a patrol moving along the western perimeter now. If we can intercept it, we might be able to acquire both transportation and a disguise." "Then that's our first objective," Leora decided. "Intercept a patrol, secure their vessel, approach the facility using their credentials." The plan was taking shape, dangerous, full of unknowns, but the only chance they had. As they gathered their equipment and prepared to move, Leora found herself watching Jay, the way he checked his weapon, the precise movements of his hands, the slight furrow of concentration between his brows. So perfectly, painfully like Jace, yet fundamentally different. She wondered what the real Jace would think of this mission, of her risking everything on the word of a construct built to deceive her. But she already knew the answer. He would have done the same for her without hesitation. "Under different stars, but the same sky, I pledge my life to guard yours." The oath they had sworn felt more relevant now than ever before. The journey toward the western perimeter was conducted in tense silence, each of them lost in their own thoughts and calculations. They moved through the transformed post-storm landscape, navigating around newly formed dunes and exposed rock formations. Jay led the way, his enhanced sensory capabilities allowing him to detect threats long before they became visible to Leora or Ferris. They traveled for nearly an hour before he signaled for them to halt, dropping into a crouch behind a ridge of wind-scoured stone. "Patrol ahead," he whispered. "Two scout vessels, minimal crew. They appear to be conducting a standard sweep pattern." Leora crawled forward to join him at the ridge's edge, peering out at the desert beyond. The Devran scout vessels were unlike anything in the light fleet arsenal, organic curves and angles blended with metallic components, hovering just above the sand on silent repulsor technology. Each vessel appeared to carry 3 Devran warriors, armed with their distinctive energy weapons. "Approach strategy," she asked, mentally calculating angles and timing. "Direct confrontation would be too risky," Ferris said from behind them. "Those energy weapons can penetrate our shields with concentrated fire." Jay studied the patrol's movement pattern. "They're following the exposed rock line, checking for damage to hidden sensors. They'll pass directly below this ridge in approximately 3 minutes. He turned to Leora. "If we time it right, we could drop directly onto the trailing vessel before they realize what's happening." "Ambitious," Ferris commented, though Leora noted he didn't dismiss the idea outright. "We've faced worse odds," she reminded him, then qualified, Jace and I have at least. The reminder of their shared history, a history that only she and Jay now remembered in full, hung awkwardly between them. Ferris nodded tightly, accepting the plan without further comment. They positioned themselves along the ridge, selecting a section directly above the patrol's projected path. The plan was simple, in concept complex in execution. Wait for the first vessel to pass, then drop onto the second vessel with stunning force. Neutralize the Devon crew quickly and silently secure the vessel, and proceed to the facility using appropriated credentials. Remember, Jay cautioned, as they made final preparations. Devon physiology is different. Their nervous system is distributed, not centralized like ours. Standard incapacitation techniques won't work. Aim for the junction points, Ferris added, indicating areas on his own body. Base of the neck, mid-spine, behind the knees. Disrupt all three and they'll go down temporarily. Leora nodded, adjusting her targeting parameters accordingly. 60 seconds, she whispered, watching the approaching patrol. The first vessel glided silently beneath their position, the Devon warriors scanning the ridge above them, but failing to detect the humans lying in wait. As planned, they allowed this vessel to pass unmolested, focusing on the trailing craft. "Ready!" Jay murmured as the second vessel approached their position. 3, Leora counted down. 2, 1, go. They launched themselves from the ridge in perfect synchronization, dropping the short distance onto the open deck of the scout vessel. The element of surprise was complete. The 3 Devon warriors had no time to react before the attack was upon them. Leora landed directly behind one warrior, immediately striking the junction points Ferris had identified. The Devon collapsed body, spasming as its distributed nervous system failed to coordinate. Beside her, Jay and Ferris executed similar takedowns with brutal efficiency. In less than 15 seconds, all 3 Devon were incapacitated, their tall, angular bodies slumped on the deck of their own vessel. "Secure them," Leora ordered, already moving toward the vessel's control console. "We need at least one conscious enough to provide access codes." Jay bound the warriors with restraint cords from their equipment packs, while Ferris examined the vessel's systems. "Controls are partly biological," he reported. "Requires Devon neural patterns to fully operate." Jay joined him at the console, studying the organic-mechanical interface. "I might be able to bypass that. My construct nature includes some compatibility with their technology." He placed his hand on what appeared to be a neural receptor, his eyes briefly flickering with the same circuitry patterns Leora had noticed earlier. The vessel responded immediately, its systems activating under his touch. Displays illuminated, showing status indicators in the angular Devon script. "We need to disable any tracking or communication systems," Leora said, watching the lead vessel continuing its patrol route, still unaware of what had transpired behind it. "They'll notice the deviation from patrol pattern soon." "Already done," Jay confirmed, his hand still connected to the interface. "I've put it in maintenance return mode standard procedure, after identifying storm damage. The lead vessel will continue its patrol, while we return to base for repairs." "And they won't question that?" Ferris asked skeptically. "Not immediately. Devon command structure is rigid. Deviation from protocol requires multiple authorizations." Jay disconnected from the interface, the vessel now responding to more conventional controls. "We should have at least 30 minutes before anyone questions our status." Leora examined one of the unconscious Devon warriors more closely. Their exoskeletal armor would be impossible to use as a disguise. The physical differences between human and Devon physiology were too great. They would need to rely on the vessel itself and Jay's ability to interface with Devon technology to maintain their deception. Set course for the facility," she instructed. "Ferris, see if you can revive one of them enough to give us any security protocols we might need." As Jay guided the vessel westward, Ferris administered a mild stimulant to the least injured Devon warrior. The creature regained partial consciousness, its multifaceted eyes focusing with difficulty. "Translate," Ferris said to Jay. "Ask it about current security protocols at the research facility." Jay spoke in a series of clicks and hisses, the Devran language incomprehensible to human vocal cords, but apparently part of his constructed capabilities. The warrior responded weakly, its own vocalizations strained and erratic. "Perimeter security has been enhanced since your escape," Jay translated, looking at Ferris. "New biometric scanners, additional patrols. But the maintenance access point you used still exists. It's considered too crucial for water reclamation to be sealed completely." "What about prisoner transfers?" Leora asked. "How would we move someone from the lower levels to the surface?" Jay relayed the question. The Devran's response was longer this time, interspersed with what sounded like warning tones. "There's a dedicated lift system for specimen transport." Jay translated his expression, darkening at the term. "Minimal security because it's entirely internal. They never considered someone might try to remove a prisoner that way." "Is it telling the truth?" Ferris pressed. "This could be deliberate misinformation." "It believes it's speaking to a superior," Jay replied. "In their hierarchy, lying to authority is punishable by neural dissolution. It's telling what it knows to be true." The vessel moved swiftly across the desert, following a course that deliberately avoided both light fleet patrol routes and known Devran outposts. The twin moons had risen fully now, casting their blue-green light across the endless red dunes. "We're approaching the outer perimeter," Jay announced, after approximately 20 minutes of travel. "Sensor grid ahead. If the vessel's credentials are questioned, we'll know immediately." Tension filled the cramped confines of the scout craft as they crossed the invisible line marking Devran territory. For several heart-stopping moments, nothing happened. No alarms, no challenge communications, no pursuit craft appearing on their sensors. "We're clear," Jay confirmed, relief evident in his voice. "The maintenance return protocol is being accepted." The landscape ahead had begun to change, the flat desert, giving way to increasingly rocky terrain. Jagged formations rose from the sand like the spines of some enormous buried creature, creating a natural labyrinth that would confound most navigation systems. "The facility entrance is disguised as a cave system within that rock formation," Jay explained, indicating a particularly massive outcropping ahead. "The maintenance access Ferris used is on the eastern face away from the main entrance." As they drew closer, Leora could see that what had appeared to be natural rock formations were partially artificial, clever constructions, designed to blend seamlessly with the genuine geology of the region. Without prior knowledge, it would be nearly impossible to identify as an entrance to a significant underground facility. Jay guided the vessel toward the eastern face of the formation, following a narrow passage between towering stone walls. The passage ended in what appeared to be a dead end, but as they approached, a section of the rock face shimmered slightly, a holographic disguise concealing a small landing pad. "Maintenance access." Ferris confirmed, recognition flickering across his features. "This is where I emerged during my escape." Jay landed the vessel on the small pad, powering down its systems to minimal levels. "The moment we disembark, we'll trigger proximity sensors. We need to move quickly to the access hatch before security responds." They gathered their equipment, preparing for the next phase of their dangerous mission. The unconscious Devran warriors were secured with additional restraints, ensuring they wouldn't recover and raise an alarm prematurely. "Ready?" Leora asked, meeting the eyes of each of her companions in turn. Ferris nodded grimly, his expression that of a soldier prepared for what might be his final mission. Jay's response was different, a small smile that contained so much of Jace's characteristic pre-mission confidence that it momentarily took Leora's breath away. "Ready," he confirmed. They disembarked from the vessel in a single coordinated movement, immediately spotting the maintenance access hatch, a circular portal set into the rock face partially concealed by holographic camouflage. As predicted, proximity alarms began to sound the moment they stepped onto the landing pad. Jay rushed to the access panel beside the hatch, placing his hand on the interface just as he had done with the vessel's controls. His eyes flickered with circuitry patterns as he communicated with the Devran security system. "Working," he muttered through gritted teeth. "The system is resisting." Leora and Ferris took up defensive positions, weapons ready, as warning lights began to flash around the landing pad. In the distance, they could hear the distinctive sound of Devran warriors responding to the alarm. Leora urged, "We're about to have company." "Almost," he replied, his entire body now tensed with effort as he fought the security system. Then suddenly, the resistance ceased. "Got it." The hatch slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel beyond. They dashed inside just as the first energy blasts struck the landing pad, where they had been standing moments before. The hatch sealed automatically behind them, plunging them into near darkness, illuminated only by dim emergency lighting along the tunnel floor. "That won't hold them for long," Ferris warned, as they moved deeper into the tunnel. "How far to the prisoner levels?" "5 levels down," Jay replied, leading them through the winding passage. "This maintenance shaft connects to the water reclamation system for the entire facility. We should be able to access the central lift from there." The tunnel sloped steeply downward, forcing them to use the handholds set into the walls to control their descent. The air grew noticeably cooler and damper as they penetrated deeper into the facility, the atmospheric composition shifting to something optimized for Devran physiology. "Activate your filter masks," Leora instructed. "The air down here is calibrated for them, not us." They each deployed compact breathing apparatus from their equipment packs, standard issue for environments with questionable air quality. The filters would allow them to breathe normally for approximately 2 hours before requiring replacement. The maintenance tunnel eventually opened into a larger chamber, the Water Reclamation Center, a complex array of filtration systems, storage tanks, and distribution mechanisms. Some appeared organic in nature, utilizing what looked like genetically modified plant material to purify and process water. "The central facility should be through there," Ferris said, indicating a heavily sealed doorway on the far side of the chamber. "But it'll be guarded, and we've lost the element of surprise now that the alarms have been triggered." Leora scanned the chamber tactical mind, already formulating alternatives. "What about the water distribution system itself? Those pipes must connect to all levels of the facility." Jay examined the network of pipes extending from the central processing unit. "Technically, yes, but they're not designed for human passage." "What about constructed passage?" Leora asked, looking meaningfully at him. He understood immediately. "I could navigate the system. My body is more resilient to pressure and contaminants than a human one. But I couldn't bring both of you that way." "You don't," Leora decided. "You go ahead. Find Jace, prepare him for extraction. Ferris and I will create a diversion to draw security away from the prisoner level, then meet you at the specimen transport lift." Ferris shook his head. "Splitting up is tactically unsound, and you're still trusting him too easily." "You have a better alternative," Leora challenged. When no immediate response came, she continued, "Jay knows the facility layout better than either of us. He can move through systems we can't access, and he's the only one who can interface directly with their technology." "And if this is the trap I warned you about," Ferris pressed, "if he leads Devran security straight to us or worse, abandons the mission entirely once he's inside?" Jay stepped forward, facing Ferris directly. "I understand your suspicion, Major. In your position, I would feel the same. But I give you my word, as whatever part of Jace Rourke still exists within me, that I will not betray you or Captain Kane." The sincerity in his voice was palpable, but Ferris remained unmoved. Words, programmed responses designed to earn trust. "Then take insurance." Jay suggested, reaching into his equipment pack and removing a small device. He handed it to Ferris. "A remote detonator keyed to an explosive charge in my synthetic core. If I betray you, if I fail to appear at the rendezvous point with Jace activated." Leora stared at him in shock. "You're carrying an explosive charge. Since when?" "Since I decided to defect," Jay replied simply. "Insurance against recapture and reprogramming." Ferris examined the detonator, his expression unreadable. After a long moment, he nodded once and pocketed the device. 2 hours. If you're not at the rendezvous with Rourke by then, I'm activating this. Understood. Jay turned to one of the larger distribution pipes, examining its access panel. This line should take me directly to the central processing hub. From there, I can access the prisoner levels. Leora approached him as he prepared to enter the pipe system. There was so much she wanted to say, yet words seemed inadequate for the complexity of the situation, this being who both was and wasn't her closest friend, preparing to risk everything to save his original self. "Be careful," she said, finally falling back on the simple phrase they had always exchanged before dangerous missions. Jay smiled, that achingly familiar smile that could be genuinely warm, even in the direst circumstances. "You too, Lee." He hesitated, then added softly, "If this doesn't work, if I don't make it back, remember that not everything they took from him was lost." Before she could respond, he opened the access panel and slipped into the pipe, sealing it behind him. Leora stared at the closed panel for a moment, a strange mixture of emotions swirling within her: hope, fear, determination, and something deeper she wasn't yet ready to examine. "He's gone," Ferris said unnecessarily. "Now we need to create that diversion, ideas." Leora turned away from the pipe, focusing on the mission with renewed intensity. "We need something big enough to draw security from multiple levels, without immediately compromising our own position." She studied the water reclamation system thoughtfully. "What would happen if we disrupted the primary filtration processes? Automatic alarms, emergency protocols." Ferris followed her line of thinking. "Contamination would be treated as a priority threat, requiring response teams from all sections." "Exactly." Leora moved toward the central control panel. "Can you access this system?" Ferris examined the interface. "Partially. My time here gave me some familiarity with their basic controls, though nothing like your construct's direct interface capabilities. That's all we need." Leora removed a small explosive charge from her pack, low yield, but highly effective against sensitive equipment. "We set this to damage the primary filters, trigger contamination warnings across all levels, then move to secure our exit route while they're dealing with the crisis." They worked quickly, Ferris accessing the system, just enough to identify the critical components, while Leora placed the explosive charge for maximum impact. They set the timer for 10 minutes, enough time for them to reach the specimen transport area and prepare for extraction. As they moved away from the water reclamation chamber, following Ferris's partial memories of the facility layout, Leora found herself thinking about Jay, moving through the water pipes, navigating the facility's infrastructure with his hybrid nature. Was he really acting of his own free will, or was this all an elaborate deception? The question persisted, even as they located the specimen transport area, a sterile clinical space with specialized equipment for moving research subjects between facility levels. The lift system Ferris had mentioned was there, currently inactive, but apparently functional. "This is it," Ferris confirmed, examining the lift controls. "Used for transporting unconscious subjects. Security is minimal, because the subjects are usually sedated or restrained." Leora checked her chronometer. 3 minutes until the diversion activates. We should secure the area and prepare for potential resistance. They positioned themselves on either side of the lift entrance, weapons ready. Leora couldn't stop her mind from running through all the possible scenarios awaiting them. Jay betraying them. Jay unable to find Jace finding Jace, but discovering him too damaged by repeated extractions to save security, overwhelming them before they could escape. The facility shuddered suddenly as the explosive charge detonated in the water reclamation chamber. Alarms immediately blared throughout the complex, lights shifting to emergency protocols. Through the specimen transport area's viewing ports, they could see Devrin personnel rushing to respond to the crisis, just as they had predicted. "Lift is activating," Ferris reported, suddenly tensing as the transport platform began to ascend from lower levels. They trained their weapons on the lift, prepared for either rescue or betrayal. The platform rose slowly into view, carrying two figures, one standing one, lying prone on what appeared to be a medical transfer gurney. Jay had succeeded. And on the gurney, strapped down but clearly alive, was Jace Rourke. The real Jace, his body thin and scarred, but unmistakably human. "Cover me," Leora ordered, moving forward, as the lift completed its ascent. Jay looked up, relief washing over his features as he saw them. "Had to sedate him," he explained quickly, as Leora reached them. "He was disoriented, combative. Didn't recognize me for obvious reasons." Leora looked down at Jace's unconscious form, emotions threatening to overwhelm her professional demeanor. He was alive. After 7 years of mourning, of guilt, of visiting an empty grave, Jace was alive. Damaged perhaps irrevocably, but alive. "We need to move," Ferris urged from his position by the doorway. "Security will figure out the diversion soon enough." Jay nodded, already guiding the gurney toward the exit. "The scout vessel we arrived in should still be viable for escape. I've modified its transmission codes to prevent immediate tracking." They moved as a unit through the facility corridors, Jay leading with the gurney, while Leora and Ferris provided cover. The diversion had worked better than anticipated. The contamination warnings had triggered a full emergency protocol, drawing security away from their escape route. When they reached the maintenance tunnel that would lead them back to the surface, they encountered their first significant resistance. A patrol of 3 Devran warriors, clearly confused by their presence in a supposedly evacuated section. Leora and Ferris reacted instantly, firing precisely targeted shots that incapacitated 2 of the warriors immediately. The third managed to raise its weapon, but Jay moved with inhuman speed, leaving the gurney to tackle the Devran before it could fire. The brief struggle ended with the warrior unconscious, its distributed nervous system temporarily shut down by Jay's precisely applied force. "Clear," he reported, returning to the gurney. "But they'll have reported the encounter. Our window is closing." The ascent through the maintenance tunnel was arduous, the steep incline making the gurney difficult to maneuver. They took turns, pushing it, straining against gravity as they climbed toward the surface. Jace remained unconscious throughout, his breathing steady but shallow. When they finally reached the maintenance access hatch, Jay once again interfaced with the Devran system to override security protocols. This time, the response was immediate. The system had been updated to recognize and reject his particular hybrid signature. "They've locked me out," he reported, pulling back from the interface with a grimace of pain. "We need another way." Leora immediately stepped forward, attaching another explosive charge to the access hatch, their last one. "Stand back. This will breach it, but every security system in the facility will activate." They took cover as best they could in the narrow tunnel. The explosion was contained but powerful, the specialized charge designed to disrupt electronic systems while creating a physical breach. When the smoke cleared, the hatch hung partially open, emergency atmospheric barriers already activating to prevent facility contamination. "Go," Leora ordered, helping Jay push the gurney through the damaged hatch before it could seal itself completely. They emerged onto the landing pad, where their appropriated scout vessel waited seemingly undisturbed, despite the facility-wide alert. As they rushed toward it, Jay suddenly stiffened his movements, becoming jerky and uncoordinated. "Perimeter system," he gasped, struggling to maintain control of his body. "Detecting my synthetic components. Trying to override." Ferris hesitated only a moment before grabbing Jay's arm, supporting him as they continued toward the vessel. "Can you fight it?" "Trying," Jay managed each step, visibly painful. "Get Jace on board, I'll hold them off." "No," Leora said firmly, continuing to push the gurney while maintaining cover fire as the first security team emerged from a different facility entrance. "We all leave together." That was the plan. They reached the vessel, just as Jay's legs gave out completely, his synthetic systems increasingly compromised by the perimeter defense grid. Ferris and Leora worked together to load Jace onto the vessel, then returned for Jay, practically dragging him up the boarding ramp as energy blasts struck the hull around them. Inside, Ferris immediately moved to the controls activating systems, while Leora secured both Jace and Jay. The construct was clearly deteriorating blue circuitry patterns, flaring erratically beneath his skin as he fought against the external override attempts. "Can't maintain," he gasped, looking up at Leora with agonized eyes. "They're trying to reactivate my original programming. If they succeed, I'll become a threat to all of you." Leora understood immediately what he was suggesting. "No, we find another way." "There is no other way," he insisted, even as his body convulsed with another system attack. His hand fumbled at his chest plate, removing a small device similar to the remote detonator he had given Ferris. "This will temporarily disrupt their signal. Long enough for you to get clear." "And what happens to you?" Leora demanded, though she already knew the answer. A smile flickered across his face, that same smile that had always reassured her before impossible missions. "A construct isn't meant to make its own choices. I made mine." His hand closed around the device. "Get him home, Lee. Tell him—" Whatever final message he intended was lost as he activated the disruptor. A pulse of energy emanated from his body, temporarily neutralizing all electronic systems within range, including those in the scout vessel. For one terrifying moment, they hung suspended in darkness as every system shut down. Then gradually, the vessel's functions began to restart emergency protocols, initiating independent of Devon control systems. Ferris worked feverishly at the console, bypassing damaged controls and rerouting power to essential systems. "We have propulsion," he reported, as the vessel shuddered to life. "Minimal navigation, no weapons. It'll have to be enough." Leora tore her gaze from Jay's now motionless form to check on Jace. He remained unconscious, unaware of the sacrifice his duplicate had just made to ensure his rescue. She secured his restraints for the undoubtedly rough journey ahead, then returned to Jay's side. The construct's systems had shut down completely. The blue circuitry patterns faded to dull gray. Whether the shutdown was temporary or permanent, Leora couldn't tell. She lacked the specialized knowledge to evaluate synthetic life forms. But the peaceful expression on his face suggested he had expected this outcome, had perhaps even planned for it. "Ready for emergency ascent," Ferris called from the controls. "Brace for impact. We're going to have to punch through their containment field." Leora took a position beside him at the secondary controls, forcing herself to focus on the immediate crisis rather than the emotional complexity behind them. "Full power to forward shields. We'll need every ounce of momentum we can generate." The vessel lurched upward, repulsor technology straining against the Devon facility's containment field. Alarms blared as systems overloaded power, rerouting automatically to maintain the essential thrust needed for escape. With a final bone-jarring surge, they broke through the containment field, the scout vessel shooting upward into the night sky of Ares 9. Behind them, the seemingly natural rock formation erupted with weapons fire tracking systems, attempting to lock onto their rapidly retreating vessel. "Course set for Light Fleet Outpost." Ferris reported, his voice tight with concentration as he navigated manually through the barrage. 19 minutes at maximum speed, assuming we're not shot down first." Leora monitored the vessel's failing systems manually, overriding safety protocols to extract every bit of performance from the damaged craft. "We need to alert the outpost, have a medical team standing by for Jace." As if summoned by the mention of his name, a groan emerged from the gurney, where Jace lay secured. His eyes flickered open, disoriented, unfocused, but unmistakably conscious. Leora moved to his side immediately, maintaining a cautious distance, in case his disorientation led to panic. "Jace, it's me, Leora. You're safe. We're taking you home." His eyes struggled to focus on her face, recognition dawning slowly through what was likely a haze of sedatives and trauma. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough from disuse, barely above a whisper. "Lee, is it really you?" She swallowed against the tightness in her throat. "Yes, it's really me." His gaze drifted beyond her, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings of the Devon vessel, then stopping abruptly as he noticed Jay's motionless form strapped to a seat nearby. "What?" He began, confusion and alarm spreading across his features. "Later," Leora said gently, adjusting his restraints to make him more comfortable. "Rest now. We'll explain everything when you're stronger." Whether from the lingering effects of sedation or simple exhaustion, Jace didn't argue. His eyes closed again, though his hand reached out weakly, seeking contact. Leora took it in her own, the simple human connection, sending a wave of emotion through her that threatened to break the professional composure she had maintained throughout the mission. He was alive. Against all odds, against 7 years of believing otherwise, Jace Rourke was alive and returning home. The cost had been enormous, perhaps including the synthetic life that had made the rescue possible. But in this moment, holding Jace's hand as he drifted back to sleep, Leora allowed herself to acknowledge that it had been worth it. The journey back to the Light Fleet outpost was tense, but uneventful. Whether due to Jay's disruptor device or simply the chaos created by their escape, the Devrin did not immediately pursue them. By the time they approached the outpost's perimeter, Ferris had managed to establish communication, explaining enough of the situation to ensure a medical team was standing by, without revealing the full complexity of what had occurred. Landing the damaged Devrin vessel in the outpost's main hangar caused immediate chaos, security teams surrounding them with weapons drawn, medical personnel pushing forward with emergency equipment, command staff demanding explanations for the unauthorized mission, and the alien craft appearing in their midst. Through it all, Leora remained focused on a single priority: Jace's safe transfer to medical care. She stayed with him as he was moved from the vessel to a medical transport, holding his hand, until the doctors gently but firmly instructed her to step back and allow them to work. Only then, watching him disappear into the medical bay, surrounded by a team of specialists, did she allow herself to truly process what had happened. The mission, the rescue, Jay's sacrifice. Ferris appeared beside her, his own expression complicated by the events they had just survived. "Command wants a full debrief in 1 hour," he informed her quietly. "I've told them the basics. Discovered intelligence about captive personnel, undertook emergency extraction, succeeded in recovering Captain Rourke." "What about Jay?" Leora asked. "The construct." Ferris's expression tightened. "Currently secured in a containment field in the research lab. Systems inactive but potentially recoverable. Command is uncertain how to proceed." Leora nodded, unsurprised by the caution, but determined that Jay's role would not be minimized or mischaracterized. "I'll make sure they understand what he did, who he was." "Captain," Ferris said carefully, "you need to consider the security implications here. If what the construct told us is true, there could be other infiltration units already in place throughout the fleet. This goes beyond one mission, one rescue." "I know," Leora acknowledged, "and we'll address it, all of it. But first I need to see Jay." Ferris looked as though he might argue further, then simply nodded. "The research lab is on sub-level 3. I'll handle the preliminary debrief with command." She thanked him with a nod, then made her way through the outpost corridors toward the research facilities. Security was heightened throughout the complex, personnel moving with the focused urgency that followed any significant threat event. Many nodded to her in passing word of the rescue mission, already spreading despite official channels remaining silent. The research lab was under heavy guard, 2 fully armed security officers positioned outside the main entrance. They straightened as Leora approached, clearly having been instructed to expect her. "Captain Kane," one acknowledged. "You're cleared for entry. Dr. Vallon is expecting you." Inside, the lab had been transformed to accommodate their unusual guest. A circular containment field dominated the center of the room, designed to neutralize potentially hostile technology while allowing for detailed analysis. Within it, Jay's body lay on an examination table, still and silent as various diagnostic equipment monitored his inactive systems. Dr. Elena Vallon, the outpost's lead researcher on Devrin technology, looked up from her console as Leora entered. "Captain, I wondered when you'd arrive." "Status?" Leora asked, approaching the containment field. "Fascinating," Valen replied, professional curiosity evident in her voice. "This is far beyond any Devran technology we've previously encountered. The integration of organic and synthetic components is extraordinary. Whoever designed this was a genius, albeit a deeply disturbing one." Leora looked down at Jay's motionless form, so peaceful in its stillness. "Can you revive him?" Valen hesitated. "Potentially. His core systems appear intact, just in standby mode. The pulse device he activated was designed to temporarily disrupt external signals, without permanently damaging his own circuitry." She studied Leora carefully. "The question is, whether we should revive him." "He saved our lives," Leora said firmly. "Multiple times. He betrayed his programming, his creators, to help us rescue Captain Rourke." "Or so he led you to believe," Valen countered gently. "Captain, I understand you've been through an extraordinary experience, but we need to approach this scientifically. This construct was created to infiltrate, to deceive. Its apparent sacrifice could be part of a more complex strategy." Leora had expected this response, had prepared for it during the journey back to the outpost. "Doctor, I'm not asking you to release him, or to trust him implicitly. I'm asking you to revive him under controlled conditions, so we can learn more about the Devran infiltration program. And—" she paused, allowing a hint of personal feeling to show, "so I can thank him properly for what he did." Valen considered this, then nodded slowly. "I can attempt a controlled reactivation. Minimal systems-only communication capabilities, but no motor functions. Would that satisfy your request?" "Yes, thank you." The doctor moved to her console, inputting a series of commands that adjusted the containment field parameters. "This will take some time. His systems are complex, and I need to ensure the reactivation sequence doesn't trigger any hidden protocols." Leora nodded, settling into a chair beside the containment field to wait. As Valen worked, Leora found herself studying Jay's features, identical to Jace's in every detail, yet somehow distinct. Not just because of the unnatural blue eyes, or the circuitry patterns that had appeared beneath his skin, but something more fundamental. An expression, perhaps, or a quality of presence that had been uniquely his own. After what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, Valen announced, "Ready for initial reactivation sequence, maintaining full containment protocols." A soft pulse of energy flowed through the containment field, targeted specifically at Jay's central processing systems. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then gradually, the dull gray circuitry beneath his skin began to glow faintly blue once more. His eyelids flickered, then opened those artificially bright eyes, focusing immediately on Leora. "You made it," he said softly, voice slightly distorted by the containment field, but unmistakably relieved. "Jace." "Safe," Leora confirmed. "In medical care. The doctors say he'll recover, though it may take time." Joy suffused Jay's features, an emotion that seemed too genuine, too human to be merely programmed. "Good. That's good." Valen monitored her equipment, closely recording every aspect of the reactivation process. "Fascinating. His neural patterns are remarkably similar to human ones, despite the synthetic substrate." Jay turned his head slightly toward the doctor, then back to Leora. "I'm being studied. Understandable." "You're being treated with appropriate caution," Leora corrected gently, "given the circumstances." A small smile touched his lips. "I expected to be disassembled immediately. This is actually better than anticipated." "I won't let that happen," Leora promised, perhaps too quickly. "You've earned better." Jay's expression turned serious. "Lee, I need you to understand something. I'm not opposed to being studied. What the Devran did, the infiltration technology, the memory extraction, all of it, the fleet needs to understand it, to defend against it." He paused. "I just want, whatever happens, for you to remember that I made my own choices. that something of Jace in me was real enough to matter. The simple request carried such weight, such human longing for acknowledgement, that Leora had to fight to maintain her composure. "I will," she promised. "I'll make sure everyone knows." "Captain," Valen interjected gently, "I need to minimize active time for this initial assessment. We can continue the conversation later, after I've analyzed the data from this session." Leora nodded her understanding, then turned back to Jay. "I have to go soon. Debriefing with Command and I want to check on Jace." "Of course," Jay agreed. Then softly, "When you see him when he's ready, tell him I'm sorry for using his memories, his identity. Tell him I tried to honor what he would have done." "I will," Leora promised again. Then, impulsively, "Jay, thank you. Not just for saving us, but for remembering. For keeping that part of him alive when I thought it was gone forever." Another smile, this one achingly, like Jace's, yet uniquely his own. "Under different stars but the same sky," he quoted softly. "I pledge my life to guard yours," Leora finished automatically. With that final exchange, Valen initiated the shutdown sequence, returning Jay to his inactive state. The blue glow beneath his skin faded gradually, his eyes closing, as if drifting into natural sleep. Leora remained beside the containment field for a moment longer, processing the complex emotions the conversation had evoked. Then, with a nod of thanks to Dr. Valen, she departed for her meeting with Command, and afterward to check on the friend she had thought lost forever. Time passed as it always does, bringing healing and adjustment in its wake. The Light Fleet Command launched a comprehensive security review based on the intelligence gathered from the Devon facility, identifying and neutralizing several infiltration constructs already in place throughout the fleet. The threat was not eliminated entirely. The Devon technology was too advanced, their strategy too patient for that, but a critical advantage had been gained. Jace's recovery progressed slowly, but steadily. The physical damage from his captivity was relatively minor and responded well to treatment. The psychological trauma of repeated memory extractions proved more challenging to address, leaving gaps in his recall and occasional disorientation. Yet his essential nature remained intact, his tactical brilliance, his dry humor, his unwavering loyalty to those he considered family. Jay's fate was decided after weeks of intensive study and debate. Dr. Valen's research confirmed what Leora had instinctively recognized, that the construct had genuinely developed beyond his original programming, achieving a form of independent consciousness that merited ethical consideration. He was neither released nor destroyed, but maintained in a specialized research facility where his knowledge could be utilized, while his unique status was respected. 7 months after the rescue mission, Leora found herself once again walking through the memorial field of Ares 9. The storms had reshaped the landscape several times since her last visit, burying some markers and exposing others in the endless cycle of the desert planet. The marker labeled J2047 had been officially redesignated, no longer listed as a memorial, but as an honorary citation. Leora had requested the change herself, arguing that no grave should stand for a living man, yet something should remain to commemorate what had been lost and found in this place. She knelt beside the marker, brushing away the ever-present red dust, but this time placed no whiskey on the sand. Instead, she simply waited, listening to the wind's mournful song across the empty desert. Footsteps approached from behind the familiar cadence of military-issue desert boots against sand. This time, she did not reach for her weapon, did not tense in suspicion. Instead, she smiled slightly, not yet turning around. "You're late," she said. "Sorry," Jace replied, his voice carrying that slight new roughness that remained from his captivity. "Doctor insisted on one final check before clearing me for regular duty." He moved to stand beside her, looking down at the marker that had once represented his absence from the world. "Strange seeing your own grave." The echo of Jay's words from months before sent a pang through Leora's chest. "I visited it every year," she said quietly. "Talked to you. Brought your favorite awful whiskey." I know. Jace knelt beside her, his movements still carrying traces of stiffness from his injuries. You told me. They sat in comfortable silence for a time, two survivors of an impossible journey, reunited against all odds. The twin moons of Ares 9 began their slow ascent, painting the memorial field in shades of blue and green. I saw him yesterday, Jace said finally. For the first time. Leora didn't need to ask who he meant. How was it? Stranger than I expected. Like looking in a mirror that doesn't quite match your movements. He traced the numbers on the marker absently. He has my memories, most of them at least. Knows things only I should know. But he's not you, Leora said carefully. No, Jace agreed. He's something different, something new. He glanced at her. He told me to tell you he was sorry for not saying goodbye properly. Leora smiled faintly. Typical. Always thinking he needs to apologize for saving everyone. Wonder where he got that from, Jace replied, with a hint of his old humor. He grew serious again. He also told me how you never stopped looking, how you came here every year even when everyone else had moved on. I made a promise, Leora said simply. Jace nodded, understanding completely. He reached out, taking her hand in a gesture that echoed their reunion months before, when she had held his hand in the escaping vessel, proof that he was real and alive and returning home. I think, he said slowly, that I'd like to start visiting someone else's memorial from now on. Honor those who didn't make it back. A pause. Maybe tomorrow. Leora squeezed his hand gently. Tomorrow, she agreed. She rose to her feet, extending her hand to help him up, a gesture of support he accepted without pride or hesitation. As they turned to leave the memorial field, Leora glanced back once at the marker labeled J2047. In the shifting light of the rising moons, she could almost imagine a third figure standing there watching, approving, perhaps even finding peace in the knowledge that his sacrifice had meant something. Ready, Jace asked, following her gaze, but seeing only the empty field stretching toward the horizon. Leora nodded, turning back to face the future walking beside her. Ready, she confirmed. Together, they departed the field of memories, leaving footprints in the red sand that would remain until the next storm came to reshape the world once more.